Hey everyone, today we're doing a lesson on active and passive voice. So this is a new skill we're going to learn this year, and guided notes will help you. So you're going to watch this video, or you can go through the Prezi at your own pace using the link provided on the guided notes, and you're going to fill in the guided notes today. At the end of the guided notes, there is a practice. So there's a guided practice we do together, and then an independent practice at the end as well. Please make sure you're filling out all pieces of your guided notes today. So just to show you what you're working on, this is your guided notes activity. And again, at the very top, you'll see the link to the Prezi if you would rather watch the Prezi at your own pace and click through it at your own pace, you can do that. And again, you will be filling in these guided notes. And at the very end, you will notice that there is an independent practice. So you're going to be creating examples of active and passive voice sentences of your own. The answers to this practice are in this video. So this video has the guided practice with the legend of Bigfoot. So stay tuned, and here we go with active and passive voice.
Active and passive voice. Today we're going to learn about active and passive voice so that you can form and use verbs in the active and passive voice, and choose active or passive voice verbs to achieve particular effects in your writing this year. In writing, verbs can be in either the active voice or the passive voice. What's the difference between the two? Well, let's take a look at these two sentences. He took a walk on the pier. A walk was taken by him on the pier. Which one do you think sounds better? Which one is easier to understand? Why? Think about it. The active voice is going to be when the subject of a sentence completes or does the action of the sentence. For example, the team won the game. Here, the subject is team. The subject is doing the action of winning. Therefore, this sentence would be an active voice. The next sentence, the cat jumped out of the window. Here, the subject is the cat, and the verb is jumped. The cat is doing the action, doing the jumping. Therefore, this sentence is also active voice. The active voice is generally more direct and used more often in writing. It's to the point and it's easy to understand. Passive voice is the opposite of active voice. Passive voice is when the subject of the sentence receives the action, or the action is being done to it. Here's an example. The game was won by the team. Here, the subject of the sentence is the game. The verb was won. The game isn't winning anything, it's being won. The action is being done to it. Therefore, this is a passive voice sentence. Here's another example. The window was jumped out of by the cat. Here, the subject is the window. The verb was jumped. The window isn't jumping, it's being jumped out of. The action is happening to it, it's receiving it. Therefore, this is an example of the passive voice. How can you tell if a sentence is in the active or passive voice? Ask yourself, is the subject completing the action verb? Is it active? If the answer is yes, it's an active voice sentence. Here's some more examples of active voice sentences. I saw someone famous at the store. The subject is I. The verb is saw. Here, I am doing the seeing, I am doing the action. Therefore, yes, the subject is completing the action. It is an active voice sentence. Here's another example of an active voice sentence. She bought groceries there. Here, the subject is she, and the verb is bought. Here, she is doing the buying. Therefore, yes, the subject is completing the action verb. This is an example of an active voice sentence. If the subject is simply receiving the action or having the action done to it, it's passive voice. So, the first thing you should do is identify the subject, then the verb, and ask yourself, is the subject doing the verb or is it being done to it? So let's look. Someone famous was seen by me at the store. Here the subject is someone famous. Our verb was seen. Is someone famous seeing someone, or are they being seen, receiving the action? Here they're receiving the action. It's being done to them, so it's the passive voice. Here's another example. The groceries were bought by her. Here the subject is the groceries. The verb were bought. Are the groceries buying something, or are they being bought? Here they're receiving the action. The action is being done to them. So this is an example of a passive voice sentence. Did you notice that verbs in the passive voice are never standalone verbs? They need a form of be, was, been, is. These are called helping verbs. So when you see passive voice sentences, you will always see two verbs working together as one. Was seen, was jumped, will be bought. Words working together, verbs working together as one. This is a way to help identify passive voice. Passive voice is often less clear, wordy, and awkward. You can see why it's not used as much as active voice. It is sometimes used stylistically by authors to change up patterns of sentences. Why should we use passive voice if it's so awkward? Well, the first time we should use passive voice instead of active voice is when you don't know who or what completes the action. For example, the museum was broken into last night. Here, I can't start with the subject because I don't know who the subject is. The police were called. The media was alerted. Here, I can't start with the subject calling the police because I don't know who it was. Another time to use passive voice is when you want to create suspense or surprise. The lamp was broken into 1,000,000 shards. After searching, the lamp-breaking culprit was caught. My cat, Ness. Here, putting the subject at the end of the sentence creates that suspense. We can also use passive voice when we want to change the focus of a sentence. For example, he was ridiculed by the whole team. Here we're focusing on he, the character. The explosion was heard by people up to 5 miles away. Here, the explosion is what we want to showcase, so we can use the passive voice to do that. You can also use the passive voice when you want to sound impersonal or more distant. Studies were done to verify the results. Measures were taken to prevent future singing. Utilizing both active and passive voice creates variety in writing to help shake things up. Let's practice. Active or passive? The legend of Bigfoot fascinates many. Look for the subject, the legend of Bigfoot. Look for the verb, fascinates. Is the legend fascinating people? Yes, here the subject is doing the action. That means it's active voice. Number 2, sometimes Bigfoot is known by other names. Look for the subject, Bigfoot. Look for the verb, is known. Is Bigfoot knowing someone, or is he being known? Here, he's receiving the action. Notice we also have two verbs working together, is known. This is an example of passive voice. Number 3, he is known as Sasquatch, or even a Yeti to some. Look for the subject, he. Look for the verb, is known. This is the same example as number 2. Here we have two verbs working together, and he is the one being known. The action is being done to the subject. This is another example of a passive voice sentence. Sometimes wonder whether he even exists. Some wonder whether he even exists. Here, the subject is some. The verb is wonder. Some people are doing the wondering. Here, the subject is doing the action. Notice there's only one verb here. This is an example of the active voice. A few sightings have been reported. Look for the subject. A few sightings. Look for the verb. Have been reported. Are the sightings reporting things or are they being reported? Here, the action is being done to them. Notice we have three verbs working together. Have been reported. Since we have three verbs working together and the subject is receiving the action, this is an example of the passive voice. Number 6. My cousin Jimothy was mocked for reporting a sighting. Look for the subject, my cousin Jimothy. Look for the verb, was mocked. Is Jimothy mocking someone or is the action being done to him? Here he's receiving the action. Notice we also have two verbs working together, was mocked. Since this has a helping verb and a main verb, and the subject's receiving the action, this is an example of a passive voice sentence. He says the two even shared some chicken while playing Jenga. Look for the subject, he. Look for the verb, says. Is he saying something? Yes. Here the subject's doing the action. This is an example of the active voice. His story was not believed by anyone but the chupacabra. Look for the subject, his story. Look for the verb, was not believed. Is the story not believing something or is it having that action done to it? Here, it's receiving the action. Notice there's a helping verb with a main verb. This is passive voice. Here, you're going to come up with some examples of active and passive voice sentences of your own. Remember, passive voice sentences have helping verbs with the main verb.
So in review, active voice has the subject doing the action. Step 1 to find active voice is look for the subject, look for the verb, and ask yourself, is that subject doing the verb? The team won the game. The cat jumped out of the window. Passive voice is the subject receiving the action or the action being done to it. Passive voice always has a helping verb with the main verb. The game was won by the team. Here the game isn't winning anything, the action's being done to it, passive. The window was jumped out of by the cat. The window isn't jumping here. It's being jumped out of. The action is being done to it. It is receiving it. It is passive voice. Again, notice those helping verbs with the main verb for the passive voice sentences.